Hello, hello. Thank you for joining us today. We have two guests we're delighted to present, a veteran novelist and comic creator McCall and our jovial editor Rowdy. We're excited to talk about their current BL comic, The Leg Less Traveled, where we follow Fletch and Judas' cross-country road trip and the music, the diversity, and the romance they find along the way. We'll learn about the friendship McCall and Rowdy cultivated over the years, from a writer-reader bond to eventually becoming McCall's indispensable editor. We'll also chat about a beautiful episode they worked tirelessly to portray Judas's emotional musical performance for Fletch, and discuss why you should be reading The Leg Less Traveled right now. Hope you enjoy!
Hey, McCall and Rowdy, how are you?
Good. Thank you for having us.
Hey yo, doing fantastic. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for coming onto the show. I am really excited to talk about The Leg Less Traveled. Why don't you two start by just introducing yourselves a little bit? McCall, why don't you go first?
Okay, so I'm the creator, or I guess you could call me the artist for the Legless Traveled. And I've actually done a couple other comics in the past, but this is my current project. We're a two-man show. I mean, I would say it's largely my putting in the effort, but Rowdy plays an important role, so I wanted him to be here. And I've been doing comics for close to 9 years now. So
Hmm.
this isn't my first rodeo, but it's my first rodeo with Rowdy. And it's been an adventure so far.
This is your first Rowdio? That's a terrible joke as it came out. I didn't want to frickin' say it. I'm sorry. Okay, let's just move on. We'll pretend that
I
we can
can't
edit
believe
that
we've
out.
never even thought of that
Yeah,
one.
we've never said that to it. That's actually
Geez,
really funny.
wow. And so yeah, I'm B Rowdy Lufkin. Nice to meet you, and I am the editor for The Leg Less Traveled. I have no drawing ability whatsoever. I have no prior experience editing comics whatsoever. So McCall is a completely crazy person having asked me to help her out with this.
So let's dive in. How did you two end up meeting each other? What's the story behind that?
So we've known each other for quite a few years now because Rowdy's been following my previous comics since I want to say like maybe 2016, 17, somewhere in there. And I've done three comics prior to The Legless Traveled. So I started in 2014. That was when I started planning my first comic, and he's been following me for a while now. We've become like slowly became more acquaintanced, and he just I want to say like wormed his way in. So we became really good friends though about 2 years ago, like at the beginning of COVID. It was early 2020. And I honestly I can't even remember really what spurred that friendship, but I think what solidified it was we had some wildfires here, and he was kind of my rock when I had this traumatic experience and I lost my house in a wildfire. And I don't know, maybe it's a shared trauma thing where you kind of build friendships over that. But he was the one that from how many miles away I don't even know, but he had texted me the morning of when I lost my house in the fire, and he had found a video online of my street that had completely burnt down, and he sent it to me. So this was the very first time that like anybody had really I don't want to say like verified it. Like I up until this point I didn't know that my house had really burnt down. But when he found that out, it was kind of a turning point for our friendship. It was like, wow, this is somebody that really cares about me. And we just got closer from there.
Yeah, I'm sure that was a very, very tough moment for you, and it's amazing to see the positives that you can find from that. Yeah, I mean, Rowdy, what was that like for you, going through that whole experience, kind of watching from afar?
It was surreal to say the least. I've never had to go through anything like that in my life, and to be so many thousand miles away and not being able to do anything to help out or protect was awful. And it was just listening to all the things that were happening, listening to the police blotter and all that stuff about what was actually going on. It was unfathomable. And I was just thrilled that McCall made the smart decision to, one of her parents called her up and said, the fires are coming your way, get out of the house. And she had the wherewithal to just take herself,
Get up
take
and
her
go.
cat, and go. And I think it was a matter of 4 hours later, because you worked the
Yeah.
night shift, right? So you were asleep.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so 4 or 5 hours later, everything was engulfed. So it was just, it was awful to watch someone that you really care about go through something like that. I will go on to say too is, I've met a ton of people in my life, and a lot of wonderful people, but McCall definitely stands out. She's totally unique and one of the few people I've ever met who I have so much in common with.
I love the bond that the two of you have formed. So, do both of you mind going a little bit into the working relationship about, how you two work together and what that process has been like?
Yeah. I would say, and I probably piggyback off of the fact that I used to do everything solo, right? But I
Mm.
would say that I do probably 90, 85, 90% of the work. Like, I mean, I'm the creator, I'm kind of the backbone to the story. And then obviously all the art is my own. But as far as our workflow goes, I mean, we meet and do kind of like a meeting like this once a week, where we do like a hard edit on text, and I'm not the greatest with like grammar and commas and things like that. So Rowdy, he really picks up the slack in that area, or yeah, he picks up my slack in that area. And then also like our creative mind, like the way that we come up with the stories and the scenarios, it's just a constant conversation between us. We're always talking about, what are Judas and Fletcher going to do next? Where are they going to go? What's going to happen in
Mm.
Texas? What's going to happen in, the Grand Canyon? What's going to happen when they get on Route 66? Like there's all these different destinations and plot points that we just have like a running commentary on what's going on. So he does have a lot to do with the creative input. But as far as the work, I would say I do about 90% of it.
And McCall, what got you into making comics in the first place? You said you've been doing this for 9 years, which
Yeah.
is unbelievable. So, what got you into it?
Um, well, I started just by reading comics, and I found web comics before I was probably 14 or 15 years old when I started reading them. And I found the first comic I ever read was Starfighter, by Hamlet Machine. And that was a web comic that was just on her own website. It wasn't on a hosting site. And then I found Lucid, I found Avile, I found Always Raining Here by Hazel and Bell. I don't know if you even know these comics, they're kind of old.
Mm.
But I actually started posting on Smack Jeeves. I don't know if you even know that website.
No, no, I don't know
So
what that is.
so before Webtoons was a thing, and before like Tapas, those hosting apps, there was a website called Smack Jeeves, and that was the original like web comic hosting site. And it
Wow.
wasn't an app, it was just a website, and it was kind of outdated. But that's where I started, and I was right out of high school, maybe 17 when I started planning, 18 when I started posting my first comic. And it just was something I always wanted to do. I mean, I've always been into art, I've always been into storytelling. So when I started it, it was probably how everybody says that they start their comic. It was just for fun, or it was a hobby or whatever. And then it snowballed into more.
Right, you also were an art student, right? You went to high school for specialty in art, and also somewhere along the way you developed, you were a novelist as well. You've written a few novels, so you you kind of
Yeah.
span the gamut artistically.
I've been drawing my entire life. I mean, since I could hold a pencil. So doing art and writing characters and storytelling has been something that has been a part of me my entire life. I feel like it was really just a matter of time, like when I started actually like posting something online.
I feel like I want to start bringing Rowdy places because you're just like the best hype man I've ever met. Like, you're
He
you're
is.
coming in here with all
He
like,
is.
I'll start inviting you to things. It's gonna be great. My life is gonna look so much better.
If there's anything he's good at, it's that. He's a hype man
It's
for
the hype
sure.
man.
There's a
Oh,
reason why I'm called B Rowdy, and it's not just the name. It's a, I don't know, it's a way of life.
It's a way of life.
yeah. It's just who you are. I love it. So in terms of art style influence, McCall, what things that you consumed when you were younger do you think influenced your art style, or how did you even develop it? Because that's a question that we get a lot from young artists.
It's a hard question to answer because there's so many different things that have, come and go in my life. But I mean, I would even go back as far as like when I was, maybe 3, 4 years old, and I was super into Disney, like old Disney movies.
Mm,
And I remember I used to like pause the TV screen and put a piece of paper up on it and then like trace Disney characters. And that was
mm,
probably where my love of art started. And I think, and maybe this is just me, but I really do think that you can still see like aspects of Disney in my art today. And then there's also like, anime, manga influence. I really was influenced by Starfighter by Hamlet Machine, which was the first comic I mentioned. Just it's just a gradual change. I mean, I would say that you don't really get to pick, it just sort of happens.
Now, talking a little bit about the comic making process, you talked about the division of work between you and Rowdy. In terms of your process of putting out a comic, what does that look like?
So I would say I have a pretty good timeline now. It wasn't always like that, but I work a hospital graveyard shift right now where I have about 6, 7 hours a night that I can draw. And it really helps that I have this set schedule where I'm like, it's almost like I have a designated place to draw and a time to draw. So while I'm, multitasking my regular job and drawing, it takes about 5 days to get an update completed. And
Mm,
that's like start sketches to finished. And me and Rowdy, we meet once a week, like I think I mentioned earlier. And we do a text edit, and then maybe it takes me another day, if that, to do whatever edits we come up with in the review.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how it's changed over time. I think the first thing that we did that McCall used to not do at all, which I think has been beneficial, is to thumbnail and to really
Yes.
think out, not only so McCall is really great about her long-term vision. Like she knows where the story is going to go. So there's like say well-defined destination points and the road to get there, right? Much like the road trip and leg less traveled, right? The road to
mhm,
get there is sometimes fraught with peril or bumps or unexpected
It
things that you
doesn't go the
actually
way
want to
you
see and do.
expect.
It doesn't go the way that you expect, right? So there's sort of we do a double of like a long-term vision, but also short-term thumbnails where we'll look 3, 4, 5 episodes ahead and try to ensure that what we're doing in the future, sort of we plant seeds or we make sure that there's seeds planted for future things that we want to hit, but also that everything is consistent with what we already had. My role then is it's sort of a
mhm,
combination of things. I would say that in addition to being the comma police and the grammar police, it's also to ensure that what is going on in McCall's mind can make its way clearly
mhm.
onto the page so that it's easy to read and easy to understand. And she's fortunate that I'm a complete moron. So
No.
things go over my head very, very easily, right? So it's like, what did you mean when you said this? Or what were you trying to say when you did this, right?
It's
So
clarity. He's
yes,
really, really good at finding clarity, or forcing me to find clarity, I should say.
yes. And I think that's, my role then is to help her find that clarity and to take what she's done and help her find it and just to be that sort of sanity check before it goes out to the public to say the things that you're thinking about aren't coming across on the page accordingly, or if you say it this different way, that'll help come across as well.
Mhm.
I would also say part of my role too was being since they went to New Orleans, being the Lenny app. We like to joke about that, like
Yep. Mhm.
adding a little bit more rowdiness, a little bit more a
It's
little bit
true.
more action, a little bit more facial expression, a little more drama or something like that.
Even like the destination, like some of the names, like the gas station names and the signs and the different
Mm.
funny things in the background that you see in the comic, I would say that's 95% Rowdy.
Yeah, my role is to name things in part. And I'd say the last part of what I do is to essentially be a project manager and to help make sure that she's staying on track and meeting her goals, because and that's something that she likes.
I love it. I never thought that I would, because like I said, I've always worked solo, but it is so nice to have somebody that's not fans or, Patreons waiting for the next update. Like, it is so nice to have somebody that I can give this to and I'm excited to give it to before it goes live. That, I mean, it's like motivation, top tier motivation for me.
So let's talk a little bit about the leg less traveled. McCall, do you mind going a little bit into the inspiration behind the story and how you came up with the concept?
Yeah, I think at my core, I love traveling and I do a lot of traveling. The story, like doing a road trip comic, was something that I think I really decided to do it because it's never really been done before. Actually, it's been done once in BL comics that I know of. And that's a story called the Less Than Great Adventures of TJ and Amal. Like, it's this really old comic on its own website. It was never on an app. It was never on a hosting site. And that's the only comic that I know of that's a road trip themed. So one, I wanted to do something original. And two, I love traveling. We've together, me and Rowdy, have been a ton of places, especially him. And I think I'm really into just like different cultures, learning about, new places and people and the different lives that we live in the US. And if I was more worldly, I would probably write a comic about, in other countries and stuff. But for now, this is what I know and this is what I'm interested in. So we just kind of took it and ran with it from there.
McCall also, I don't want to put words in her mouth per se, but you also you want to talk a little bit about your fascination with Americana and
I
just
do.
representing life in the United States.
Yeah, it's noteworthy. It's worth noting that I do really like kind of a retro Americana theme. I like it in decorations, I like it in stories, I like it in movies. So that also influences it. Music, like, I love music. I'm a huge music person. That also influenced the comic a lot. So there's a lot of pieces. There's a lot of things that went into it.
So it seems like you started with the concept itself. Did you know right off the bat that you wanted to make it a BL story, or did you add that in as you were developing it?
No, that was always going to be from the beginning. Like, I love romance. I mean, I've written a couple, romance novels too, and my other comics were BLs, so it's a good comfort zone for me. Actually, it's also, I feel like we're missing a big piece here, which is the fact that my previous comic, which was a fantasy romance called Periwinkle Blue, that was actually more popular than The Leg Less Traveled is now. I mean, Periwinkle Blue was kind of like my my big one before this comic, and that comic I didn't finish, and I ended up stopping it and putting it on kind of an indefinite hiatus because I wasn't happy with it. I wasn't happy with what I was doing. I got kind of far off track. I didn't have Rowdy, that's probably why. And then when I didn't have any other, like, I didn't have any fight left in me to do this, Periwinkle Blue comic, I kind of thought that The Leg Less Traveled was going to be my last comic. Let's put it that way. I thought it was going to be my last comic. I thought, this was it. So I better do something that I really enjoy and make the most of it.
You started with the concept, then you knew it was going to be a road trip comic. You knew it was going to be BL. What was character development like for you?
Oh, it's always different with characters. Music was a big influence, especially for Judas's character. Music was a big part of how he developed. We also really wanted unique characters that you don't see in BL very often. So that was having a POC main character, and that was having a disabled main character. And props to Rowdy for that one, because he's the one that came up with the idea of having Fletch missing a leg. And I would say their designs, like their actual designs, they came fairly quickly. It probably took like a month just to kind of get their designs done. And once you get the design right, it's really easy to fall in love with it. And for me, that doesn't take very long. But I will say, this is just kind of a fun fact. originally Kinley, the character Kinley in the comic,
Mm,
was going to be the main character. He was going to be our Fletch. And it just didn't vibe right. Like him and Judas, just it wasn't
mm.
the right it wasn't the right match. And so we ended up scrapping Kinley, and then we kind of came up with Fletch, and then later on brought Kinley back in.
It just came over the span of a good few months of talking about this and what kinds of characters that she wanted to have in the story and what their personalities might be like. And it just always was through casual conversation that
Mhm.
we both, so she works the night shift and I just don't sleep. So we would just, if I'm having trouble sleeping, we would just end up talking about the comic or talking about the characters. And it just sort of evolved on its own, and they kind of just they created themselves so much. It's really funny that that McCall always used to say, like, the characters write themselves, and I always thought that that was kind of crazy until I actually started living it. And they do, their personalities develop, and I mean, it's almost as if all of them are sitting in the room right next to me or right next to McCall. Like, we know what they're thinking, we know how they would react like 99% of the time.
Yeah, they're their own people for sure.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for people in terms of, getting characters to feel that real? Because that's obviously a very difficult thing to get to, but once you do, like you said, the magic of getting, the characters to feel that real, I'm sure it drastically changes the creative process.
Um, I I wish there was an easy way to do it. But there's not a lot of structure for us, at least with these characters. Like he said, it just was very natural, and it was a product of us talking and, casual conversation about it. But I think ultimately, like, everybody finds inspiration in different areas. For me, like I said, a lot of it's music, a lot of it's just like the things that I'm into right now. It's not always the same, but like things I get into. Um, and whatever those inspirations are, like, you pull from those and you give them pieces of yourself, pieces of your own experience, and they write themselves. If people have trouble with that, because I do know a lot of writers, not necessarily webcomic artists, but writers, they're very into creating like character pages and having backgrounds written out and having everything written out, from their eye colors to their personalities to what they like, what they dislike. I'm not really into that. I kind of just like the natural flow of creating characters. But some people need that structure. So I think it's just what finding works for you.
I think the externalization of it also helped quite a bit. Like that we were able to talk about it as much as we did. It makes them it brings them to life just by talk. I mean, I can't even count the number of hours we've talked about each of the characters and what their lives might be like or could be
Mm.
like, or what their experiences might be. And it's something, and it's aspects that we both drew on from our own experiences growing up.
A good example of that is the characters' moms, Fletcher's mom and Judas's mom. Both, I would say, both of those characters have aspects of our life in them, and our mothers that we've had to deal with. And you pull from experiences that you have. I don't, it just adds to it. I think that might be where the magic is.
Mm.
Part of it is also the magic is just plain McCall, is that she has one of her greatest talents, having read her novels and all of her web comics, she just has an innate ability to create compelling, very relatable, real characters.
But I can't spell and I can't do commas.
There's a price for everything. And
Right.
your price for making great characters is spelling, which seems fine to me. I feel like I'd take that any day of the week.
A good
So
trade-off.
yeah, it's a really good trade-off. What did you want your readers to feel as they read the like less traveled? What were the themes that you were trying to hit?
Definitely diversity. We want to show a lot of different places in the comic. We want to make readers feel like they're going on this road trip with them. Food is another big one that kind of goes along with the culture, the diversity. Music, because obviously Judas is a musician. His siblings are, they're the band members for Les Lavelles, and it's all it's also like the retro Americana thing. Like, there's a lot of themes, but I think overall, the general is that we want to have a romantic, lighthearted story. It's a very fun BL. It's not going to have any trauma. It's not going to have, any major heartbreak or anything like that. It's just a story about growth and acceptance and love and, new places and new people and kind of just the good in the world, like the good that's still out there.
I would say another thing that we kind of talk about quite a bit that isn't it sort of runs through the veins of our conversation, but it's also hope that,
Mhm.
given the past, 5 to 10 years, is that especially not just internal but external of what the United States, what America looks like, is that we are fragile, we're divided, we're
Mm,
so different that there's no way that we can all get along. And we wanted to try and create a story and create experiences to show that if you give people a chance, that people from very, very different backgrounds and very, very different ways of being can actually get along and find a lot more commonality than they might think
Mhm.
otherwise.
Yeah, and it's a brushstroke over the whole thing. I mean, we don't want to get overly political with the comic, but
No,
we want it to be good, and we want it to show, those themes.
that's actually a big thing that we didn't want to do, is to be heavy-handed with anything. So, for example, like Fletch's missing leg, or
Right.
the fact that Judas is African American, and he'll be traveling in places that may have some stereotypes around that sort of thing. That we wanted to show what the world could look like when everybody gives everybody else a chance, and to
Right.
sort of almost to like normalize diversity. I think that's what we wanted to try and do. And it might be a little bit, utopian on our part, but still, we think that that's an ideal that we should all strive for. And just to have a comic that can show to show that potential, that there is room and a
Right.
place for all of us.
And it doesn't sacrifice who they are either, because you do have obviously Judas's culture in New Orleans and, being French Creole, and there's a lot of identity in that for the characters, and like Fletch being disabled, like it is a part of him, but it's not the whole part of him. The comic is not, it's not about him being disabled, but it's very present in that. So it's a fine line, it's actually a really, I would say, ambitious thing for us, but it's a fine line between going too far, and we so far so good. We've never had any issues.
yeah, it's an important message to get across too, because I mean, you kind of look anywhere at the, what's kind of happening around the world, and it's very easy to feel negative and to feel that there's a lot going wrong, and people definitely need to balance that out with experiences of what it looks like when good comes out of, meeting different people, seeing different perspectives. So
Right.
appreciate the fact that both of you are putting a story like that out there. It's definitely made me feel a bit more hopeful about, what you can see in the world. So appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you've enjoyed it so far.
Thank you. And it's definitely both life philosophies that we try to practice what we quote unquote preach to, right?
Right.
That's something we both really love. We love diversity. We both love meeting various kinds of people and being exposed to wildly different things. So like both McCall and I come from vastly different backgrounds, and
Mm.
we've got to experience each of our lives. Like she's come and visited me multiple times, and I've visited her now as well. And just to experience how different our lives are. Our backgrounds are so different,
Mm.
and how much I don't know how close you can still be with such different backgrounds. It's awesome.
I'd love to talk a bit about what it's like for you to engage with your audience. At the end of your episodes, sometimes you'll say, "Oh, hey, I'm going to be at this comic convention." It seems to be a big part about what you do. Why are conventions so important to you?
So I kind of fell in love with the con circuit probably, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And it was something that kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. Like I didn't even know it was a thing where you could just like get a table and set up a display and sell merchandise. Until I discovered it. And then once I did discover it, it was like, I got to do that. I just knew from the very beginning. I was like, that's what I need to do. I want to do that. I want to talk to people. You can probably tell with this podcast, I like to talk to people about, my stuff. So I went to one, and I would say my first one was a major failure as far as profits go, but it was probably the best thing that I could have done, because it really it really gave me an outlet to do a different part of what I wanted to do, not just comic creation, not just the online portion, but actually meet people and talk to people. And um, when I go to conventions, a lot of it is catered to the fans. I do a lot of fan art stuff for them. But the ultimate goal is to be there promoting webcomics and, kind of this brand that I've created for myself.
In terms of other ways to support yourself, you talked about, my first convention, it wasn't maybe as successful as I would have, but it was one of the best things that you could do. In terms of success, it seems like you found a lot of success with your Patreon. So can you talk a little bit about how Patreon has really changed the way you can support yourself with your work?
Yeah, I wish I had a good answer for this,
Mm,
but the truth is, like, we put this under a microscope and looked at it and looked at it and looked at it for so long, and we still don't really know what it is that drives people to my Patreon
mm,
specifically more than anybody else's as far as webcomics go. I do have a lot of very old fans, like older. They've been, following me for 6, 7 years, and I'm very thankful that they're still following me. But as far as like the conversion rate, I don't know. I wish I had a better answer. I guess I just got lucky there. I guess my comic is the type of comic when people read it, they feel like they want to read more right then and there. Maybe it's an impulse thing. I don't know. Rowdy, if you have anything, he's the numbers guy. I'm not in, like,
mm.
I don't do numbers, but he maybe has something else. I don't know.
I have tried to figure this out as well, and I don't have any good conclusion for this either. I can hypothesize that the comic itself is probably written written and geared towards people who are in their early 20s or later, or early 20s or later. Everybody can relate, relate to it, but if that's sort of the people that are going to be reading your comic, they're the ones who probably have like discretionary money that they, and a credit card that they're willing to pay a couple bucks a month to.
Versus a comic that maybe is a much younger audience.
Correct.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe.
But again, it's a hypothesis. We have no demographic data or anything like that to support it. So
In terms of the kind of marketing your comic and getting your word out, McCall, like you said, you've had loyal readers who've been following you for a long time. So they're one group. Have you tried anything else to get new readers? Has that been something that you've spent a lot of time thinking about?
So we have tried so many different things, with especially with the leg less traveled. Like with this comic in particular, I don't I don't want to sound arrogant, but I do want to say that I don't know why more people aren't reading it. I really think that it's just lost in the bowels of Webtoon. Like I
Mm,
just don't think people find it. And I think that's a lot to do with like oversaturation. Um, I I don't know. I mean, there's other aspects like we could try putting out ads, but those have never really worked before for me.
yeah.
We could try, like I could try and do like a TikTok channel where, maybe I promote the webcomic through a TikTok and maybe it goes viral, and that's like, that's just a chance you take, right? Like there's no set path to like make this work. It's just like this uphill battle that we've had from the very beginning.
sort of things we've tried along the way. Instagram pages. We've done TikTok videos,
Even
Reddit
Reddit,
posts,
yeah, Reddit
Mm.
Reddit
posts.
posts, talking to other we also have made friends with other creators in the space too that have been
Mhm.
fantastic and forthcoming with some of the ideas that they've figured out along the way. But it's I'll be honest, like this is one of the most frustrating things I would
It
say
is.
about being a webcomic artist, is that all this process seems like a complete black box.
Mm.
How one gets noticed by, notice me senpai, please notice me webtoon. Like what is the secret? What do I need to do?
I've probably sent Webtoon like 4 or 5 emails over the last year and a half, just being like, can you give me anything? Can you tell me, am I doing anything wrong? Am I doing anything right? What do you need? What do you not need? Do you accept things that are like I've tried so many things and they won't even respond to you. Like they won't give you any information. So
You
Yeah.
mentioned about how many different webtoons there are. What are both of your thoughts, and maybe Rowdy, we can start with you, on just how much webtoon and webcomic has changed in, the past decade? I mean, there's obviously a ton of new artists, which is great, but we've heard this recurring theme where it can be hard for you to find an audience for your story.
I would say that as the platforms have continued to evolve and how they monetize, that has probably also changed what kind of demographic is coming to the various sites and whatnot, right? So
Mhm.
Webtoon, for example, right, though they have their own coin purchasing system, but they also have a huge ad generating engine, right? And I was just looking at this last night, as a matter of fact. That 60% of their over 60% of their demographic is people ages what they say 0 to 20, 0 to like 25 or something like that, right? So it's basically young adults. That's
It's a very
60%.
young, yeah.
Yep. And then like 30 something percent are ages 25 to 34,
Mm.
right? And so whoever's in the outlier after that, I don't know. They're making big money on marketing, and they're banking on the fact that people are reading comics.
So to them, having more comics, more, that's probably the best thing for them.
What do you want to see from the future of the webcomic industry?
I would love to see a way for independent artists to get back into their own spaces. And that's not to say that Webtoons is a bad space to be, or it's not, hugely helpful to some people. It is. And it's been a huge help for me too. Not not in some of the ways I've expected, not in the ways that, I hoped it would be, but it is still a great platform to get started on. But I hope going forward, growing as an artist, that independent artists and creators find a way to get traffic from these apps back to their own space, if that makes sense. Like I would love to have not just my own website, but a website that's successful that people actually visit. And right now, because Webtoon, like we said, it kind of owns the webcomic world. It's just not worth it. It's not worth the money for a website. It's not worth the uphill battle trying to get, foot traffic to your website.
Mm.
But I hope one day it is.
Rowdy?
I would say there's two things that I would love to see. So one is transparency. I would love to see more clear guidelines about what it takes on their end to get noticed,
Mhm.
to what criteria are they looking for? Because when you have somebody that is producing, what they think is great content, and they're doing it with regularity, which is a huge endeavor and undertaking, right? These comic creators are pumping out like at least one major episode a week, if not more, right? And it just takes so much time and effort. The other thing I'd like to see is more fine-grained searchability and more fine-grained tagging, right? So Webtoon
Yeah.
right now,
Mm.
you can't even tag you can't even tag your comic as BL right now. And
Mm.
I'm not sure why. Tapas has that
Yeah,
ability,
Tapas
but
lets you do that.
but to have more fine-grained specificity and better searching capabilities would be fantastic. Just to get out there. A third thing that I've sort of thought about, and this is sort of a loose idea, and I haven't really thought about it, but to allow creators to sort of put their money where their mouth is, and to pay some money themselves to get their comics noticed as well. And that's sort of a mixed bag though, right? Because then, if you've got, then it becomes this like pay to play type game where, if you've got more money behind you, right, your comic's going to get noticed, and it sort of like undemocratizes the whole thing. So I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that, but it is at least an idea that's worth considering.
And what advice do you have for young comic creators?
I would say, and maybe this is, I don't know, if you ask this question to 90% of the artists out there, I feel like their answer is going to be pretty generic, and it's going to be to just have fun with it and just try your best, have fun with it, start somewhere, get the ball rolling like that. And that is important. It's very important. But I think if you're really considering a webcomic and you're serious about it, like if you're not just doing it because it's a hobby, because you want to have fun with it, I think it's important to really have a structure and go into it knowing that it's going to take up X amount of time, and knowing that if you want to be successful, you're going to have to put in the effort and you're going to have to put out the work for it. I say that as somebody who's been doing comics for, like I said, 9 years, but it really, it's based on what you want, because there are creators that it is just a hobby for them, and it starts out as something fun and wonderful, and if they have 10 followers, they're happy, and they're, that's all they need, right? But if you're in it for the sake of creating more as a business, then you have to plan for that. It's more than just drawing.
Rowdy, anything you want to add?
So yeah, probably, just to sum up what McCall said, you need the big D in the room, discipline.
Discipline. Yeah, that's
and,
it.
and it's not easy, and it's hard to it's an emotional roller coaster. I mean, even and I'm just an editor, right? I'm not even the one creating the thing, right? But just to see the ups and downs of, why isn't this thing getting as much traction as I would hope? Why, when some people are complaining about certain things that you're doing, or they have critiques that you're not, it's hard.
It takes ambition, and it takes like tenacity to do it.
And some thick skin, and
Yeah.
and that understanding that fine line between, are my viewers, are what my, my readers telling me, is it actually true, or are they just like trolling me?
Mm.
And trying to just take all of that in stride and figure out what the right next steps are.
So while also still having integrity to like who you are and the story you want to tell.
And having somebody that is on your side that you can actually trust to give you like candid feedback.
Yes.
Like I think that helps
Right.
quite a bit too. You don't want anybody blowing smoke up your butt, because then you'll end up with a blind spot. So if you can find somebody that you trust that can do that you actually believe in what they say, that helps out too. And it also, you're not working alone then, and it's not as lonely.
And the payoff of having somebody on your side, whether your comic has 10 views or 10,000 views, is really, it's important. I've learned that is very important. And I think having, going from just being a solo creator to having an editor and having somebody kind of guiding me and going through the trenches with me really makes a difference.
Yeah, I mean, it's been incredible to talk to the different artists that have come onto the show. Some have editors from Webtoon, some have friends, other or siblings even that help, and you can see the difference in creative process. So this idea of finding someone to work with you, I'm sure it's difficult. McCall, there probably been a few other people who may have wanted to work with you, but I'm glad you two have found each other, and it seems like it's a partnership that works very well together.
It is, and she gets what she pays for too.
Which is, I don't pay him anything.
Yeah, I don't make a dime off of any of this. I do this because this is a hobby and a creative outlet for me that I never would have gotten any other way, and it's totally changed my life. Like this, I love doing this. I absolutely love doing
And
this.
like we said earlier, like it's a matter of trust. Like I probably wouldn't pick anybody else to do this with.
I love it. That's so wholesome. Are you two ready to close things off with our rapid fire question?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Sure.
So which fictional character best describes your personality? Rowdy, why don't you go first on this one?
I had a real hard time with this one, but I'm going to say Max from Goof Troop.
It's so true. I mean, if you knew him in real life, you would know that was even more true. For me, I don't know. This is one of those questions. This is probably the only question that I was like, I don't know that I can answer that.
Too difficult. Well, now I'm going to put Rowdy on the spot. Rowdy, can you think of, is there someone you can think of? If it's controversial, we can skip. I don't want to get you fired on the pod, but is there someone that comes up on to mind?
I've already lost my job 10 times over before this anyways. It's all good. But for McCall, oh, that is actually a tough one. A fictional character. All right, my answer is going to be her chibi. The chibi that she draws.
That's great.
All right, McCall, next one. Which 3 comics would you take with you on a desert island?
I feel like we should both answer this question because they're probably similar. At least one I know we'll agree on is Spurs and Stripes by Red Mari, which is actually a comic that's been going on for a long time, and it's just finished. Like it just finished this year, maybe a month ago, and it's been going for 7-8 years, something like that. We've been following it from the very beginning, and we love that comic. But aside from that, I would say maybe Aviole by Lucid. That's one of the originals that I ever found. maybe Starfighter, which is also like the first comic I ever read. These are also completed. Like these are all 3 completed comics. So like I'm not going to take a comic that's halfway done to a deserted island, because then I'm just going to be sad.
Rowdy, top 3.
All right, I'm limiting myself to just webtoons, because if we open this up to like manga, then my 3 would change. So I would also say yes, Spurs and Stripes. It's one of my favorites as well, and it was the first BL comic the first US based BL comic I ever read. So it's near and dear to my heart. The second would be Stare Down, which is another. It's
You
another
guys
fantastic.
know.
Yep.
It's another fantastic comic, just because of it just handles the vibe so well, like the pacing, the vibe of the genre so well. And the last one is not a BL. It's a new one on Webtoon, Jackson's Diary. I think it's a load of fun. I really enjoy that comic, and it's not a comic that I would typically read, but I think it's fantastic.
I got to catch up on that one.
Next one. If you could pick any creator to have dinner with, who would it be?
You should tell them the story, Rowdy. Actually, this is it's a funny.
I had the joy of being able to have dinner with one of the creators of Spurs and Stripes. So that was awesome. So Red of the Red Mari pairing that does Spurs and Stripes, I actually got to have dinner with them. So I don't have anybody right now because my dream has been fulfilled.
Hey, you also had dinner with me at one point, so
That's true. That's true.
you've got 2 under your belt. For me, I would probably pick. He mentioned Stare Down. Soy, the creator of that comic, I adore her. She's just wonderful, and I think it would be fun to meet her and talk to her, because she lives all the way on the other side of the world. So if we met, it would be such a high contrast, 2 different people, and getting to talk about our different like journeys on this webcomic app and everything. It would probably be her if I had to pick. We also have another friend who they're a brand new webcomic artist, but they've done a lot of animation. And that's Neil Illustrator. And she is somebody that I think we will meet eventually, because she's getting into conventions and stuff too. So it would be it would be really nice to meet her.
And she just launched a comic on Webtoon for the competition called Covenant 13. That's phenomenal. Her art style is phenomenal. I also want to, not to take away the thunder of the rapid fire, but I also want to put a shout out to Soy from Stare Down, because TLLT's success is in part due to her and her willingness to sort of help us out and give us feedback, and she helped promote us a little bit as well. And so we are totally indebted to her graciousness and kindness.
And she's the way that we found out about this podcast too. So
she is great. We absolutely love Soy. Loved having her on the show, and glad to see she was able to help so much. What are both of your favorite scenes from any webtoon?
You can go.
I'll kick this one off.
Yeah.
All right. So selfishly and shamelessly, in the Leg Less Traveled, the stage singing scene, which took a very long time to do. That was probably one of the biggest undertakings, both reviewing and for McCall drawing, and it was rough, but I absolutely adore that. But aside from our own work, the first kiss and Heartstopper in the Heartstopper comic.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. For me, I'm gonna pick the other comic that's a road trip comic that I know of, and that's the Less Than Epic Adventures of TJ and Amal, which is such a mouthful for a name. But there's a scene in that comic where the 2 characters are obviously they're on this road trip together, and it's the first like major hotel scene that you get with them. And they're drinking, they're watching some old TV show that they both know, and the characters like just have a good time together, and it's the first time that they really like loosen up and enjoy each other's company, because they don't know each other on this road trip either. And that scene sticks out in my mind because I think that's probably one of the biggest inspirations, is that scene in particular, for me wanting to do a road trip comic.
And then for our final question, if you could have dinner with a fictional character, who would it be?
Judas, because he would take me someplace delicious. Yeah, probably Judas.
I had such a hard time with this one. I had such a hard time with this one, and I don't have a good answer, so I'm gonna give my backup answer. The character Owen Meany from the John Irving novel A Prayer for Owen Meany.
Oh, I don't even know that. That's an oddball one for me.
Rowdy, McCall, thank you so much for taking some time. Listener, please check out The Leg Less Traveled on Webtoon. From there, you'll be able to find McCall's link tree, and you'll be able to find their Instagram, Patreon, and a bunch of other goodies tucked into that link tree as well. But Rowdy and McCall, thanks so much for taking some time today.
Yeah, thank you for having us. It's been a lot of fun.
This was an awesome experience. Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining us today. If you have any feedback or want to be featured as our next guest, please write to us at pixelsandpanelspod@gmail.com. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe, like, or give us a 5-star rating. See you all next week.